Half of Alan Wake 2 is great, groundbreaking and deep. The stakes are high and the drama is palpable. And the other half looks really great. You'll love Alan Wake 2 if you love survival horror games, and if you've browsed my channel, you'll know that survival horror games are my favorite. Alan Wake 2 feels like Resident Evil 2 Remake, but with a whole lot more depth in its gameplay, story, and characters. But it falls far short of Resident Evil 2 and really most survival horror games in the combat department. But, yes, another but, it's still worth it if you love weird shit. Especially if you love David Lynch, as this game is blatantly inspired by Twin Peaks, his surrealist TV show from the early 90s.
I smell coffee.
This is, excuse me, a damn fine cup of coffee.
And you'll love, love, love this game if you're a graphic snob like I am. Not only are the environments photorealistic and the character animations almost picture perfect, but Remedy Entertainment innovates beyond even that. Alan Wake 2 was at times surprising, shocking, even delightful, leaving me with a big smile on my face, snapping videos to my friends because the scene was so bonkers.
I'm sorry. Who are you?
But also frustrating, annoying, and in many cases, broken. Alan Wake 2 is broken up into two distinct parts. In one part, you play as Saga, a motherly FBI agent who has psychic abilities investigating murders in the small town of Twin Peaks. Bright Falls. And in the other part, you play as the titular Alan Wake, trying to figure out how to get out of the Dark Place, an evil manifestation of his books he's been trapped in for 13 years. And one of those sections far outshines the other. But before I get to the two separate parts, I have to talk about just how damn innovative the visual design of this game is. The graphics are phenomenal, almost photorealistic, but something unique to Alan Wake 2 and other Remedy Entertainment games is seamless integration of full motion video into the game worlds. This blew my mind. It also blew my mind in Control, another Remedy Entertainment game, but Alan Wake 2 is much more my kind of game. It's something that is so good, I can't believe Remedy Entertainment is the only one doing it. Shadows blur in and out of reality in ways only video can. And the way they seamlessly blend the full motion video into the backgrounds and environments is the answer to the dreadful full motion video I suffered through in the 90s.
You know, I bet the guy that built this place must have been really bizarre.
There was one whole section, which I'll talk about in the spoiler video, that had me smiling ear to ear because it was so delightfully bizarre, and also looked amazing. So, if for no other reason, Alan Wake 2 should be experienced for its innovative visual design. And this is also my kind of story. You play as Saga, a detective with a husband and daughter paired with Alex Casey, a typical gruff detective you'd see in a film noir. They're sent to Twin Peaks, Bright Falls, because there was a murder at the lake. It turns out a guy who was dead came back to life and killed some people. And there's a mysterious cult in the area that Saga links to the murders. And while this is all happening, you're finding pages from a manuscript written by Alan Wake, which seems to be describing all that's happening and might even be changing reality, including the realities of the detectives themselves. But that's as far as I'll go here. The game takes you to some really fun, scary places, like an abandoned coffee-themed amusement park and an abandoned-ish nursing home. Not only are the main characters really fun to talk to and play as, but you also run into some really fun characters. My favorite has to be Rose, an Alan Wake superfan, but there's also Tor and Odin, two aging heavy metal rockers, the redneck police officers you end up working with. The writing and characters really shine in Alan Wake 2. And if you didn't notice from the names, the game has a distinctively Nordic vibe. Lots of references to Nordic gods, and a lot of the characters have light Nordic accents, which I'm not sure was on purpose or not, given that Remedy Entertainment is based in Finland. The game also has some fun systems within it. Like, Saga has a mind place she goes to where you put clues up on a big board like they do in the movies when they're trying to find serial killers. At first, I thought it was kind of hokey and handholdy, but I ended up really liking it. She's also kind of psychic, so when you meet people, you can communicate with them through the mind place in a way that's really cool because it blends actual video into her conversations. It's also peppered with references to her life, like a photo of her daughter, a note from her mother, things like that. But so far, I've only been talking about one part of the game. I think I would have been happy if this was the only storyline going, but there's a whole nother story that you bounce back and forth between featuring the titular Alan Wake. He's stuck in the Dark Place, which is essentially a film noir version of a block of New York City. He's being pursued by a dark monster that wears his face that he calls Scratch. He's trying to get out, and to get out, he needs to find murder sites in various locations like a subway, a hotel, and a movie theater. I actually really liked the environments, but everything else about the Dark Place is far inferior to the Saga sections. There's a lot of what am I supposed to do now happening. There's a mechanic where you're navigating through dark alleyways and there are bright lights around that you absorb and then let out in other areas, which reveals doors, things like that. The main gameplay loop of these sections involves walking around trying to find murder sites, and on your journey, Alan puts up scenes on his plot board. And the scenes are dead ends until you find echoes. The echoes give him new ideas, which, when placed on the plot board, changes the scene to another time and place where you'll find new clues, new doors, and new ways to get out. I like that it's so integrated with the story of the game, but it also sounds a lot cooler than it is, and it leads to a lot more confusion than in the Saga sections. It also works thematically with what Alan is going through, but being confused isn't my favorite thing in a game. The Alan Wake sections also feel like the designers were trying to be scary, as opposed to the Saga sections, which were just scary. Like, in the Dark Place, they'd paint a bunch of blood on the wall, doors would explode, things like that. In Silent Hill games, I'm afraid to enter rooms because of what might be inside. In the Dark Place, I'm more frustrated that once I make it into that room, I'm going to be just as confused as before. And there's another mechanic which didn't make much sense to me, which is that you can switch between the two sections at will. You can choose not to play the Alan Wake section if you don't want to, but by the end, you also have to play the Alan Wake sections in order to beat the game. So I ended up forcing myself to play them because I didn't want to be stuck playing the Alan Wake sections for an extended period. And all of this isn't to say that Dark Place is all bad. The Dark Place also had some of the more bizarre moments that surprised me in a very good way. I don't want to spoil the surprise for you, but generally the beginnings of the Alan Wake sections are really cool. But then, once I got to the slog of it all, I was more frustrated than delighted. Speaking of frustrating things, let's get to what I really didn't like about the game, which was another big part of why I didn't like the Alan Wake sections. The worst part of the game by far is the combat. It's not difficult, it's not challenging, it's frustrating, annoying, and often unfair. For a few reasons. It uses a quick slot system, and anytime you want to switch guns or heal, you have to navigate the quick slots, and the game doesn't pause, which works in a lot of games, but in Alan Wake 2, you play in two separate stories with two separate types of guns, and it kills your muscle memory. It would have benefited from a system that slows down time as you're switching guns, like in Starfield or Final Fantasy VII Remake or Doom or in countless other games. To heal, you have to hold down R2 for as long as it takes. There's pills you can take that instantly heal you a little, a pad that takes a little longer to heal you more, or a med pack that heals you completely but takes a while. So it's hard to heal during combat, which I like because it's more realistic, but ends up being more frustrating than fun. Then there's the guns. Saga has much better guns than Alan. They're better because they can actually hold ammo. In the Alan Wake sections, you have your main revolver with 6 bullets that takes forever to reload, a really good flare gun that kills enemies instantly but it only holds 1 bullet at a time and takes forever to reload, and then the most frustrating is the shotgun that only holds 2 bullets and takes forever to reload. Both Alan and Saga have stuff you can find in the world to upgrade your guns, but exploring was so frustrating in the Alan Wake sections that I didn't end up finding many of the upgrades. For Saga, I found most of the upgrades, but they don't really upgrade your guns that much. Another combat mechanic involves your flashlight. You collect batteries which give you charges that you can use to supercharge it and zap enemies. For Saga, it stuns an enemy and reveals a weak point, which was a fun mechanic. For Alan, I'll get to that in a second. So when you're in combat, you're constantly reloading, trying to fast switch, or holding R2 to heal. I like a game that's realistic. I like a game that's challenging, but this combination is mostly frustrating. The enemies in Alan Wake 2 are fast zombie-type things, which, again, is fine, but they're also bullet sponges, which makes everything I mentioned earlier a lot more frustrating. In Saga's section, they're just zombies, but in the Alan Wake sections, they're shadows. Some of the shadows can hurt you, and some are benign. You don't know which is which until you shine your flashlight on them for a bit, or use one of your zaps on them. Once you zap a shadow that turns out to be an enemy, then you can shoot them, but they can hurt you whether they're shadows or not. So this makes the Alan Wake section, again, much more frustrating, especially when you have to empty whole clips on them to take them down. Even using more powerful weapons like Saga's rifle does bafflingly low damage. You also have grenade-type weapons you can use, but I never used them because the controls are so clunky, I would die before I got a chance to throw them. There's also a dodge move attached to L1, which worked about 70% of the time. There are some enemies who attack you twice in a row, so when you dodge, you only dodge the first attack, and then they get you with the second. Survival horror type games are supposed to make you feel scared. The protagonists aren't always good with their weapons like in Silent Hill 2. Games like Resident Evil 2 Remake have the same sort of combat, but if I die, I blame myself and I'm excited to try to get through a tough section again. In Alan Wake 2, I roll my eyes and pray I get through it the next time so I don't have to do it again. The other major downside to Alan Wake 2 are the technical issues. I played on PC and I've got a top-of-the-line Intel processor and a GeForce 3080 Ti, and every time I opened the map, it looked like a potato for 2 to 6 seconds. If you've ever played a game before, you know how often you want to quickly check the map. How hard is it to load a map? Basic things like going through the inventory slowed to a crawl, with the frame rate dropping to sub 15 frames per second. To move through inventory items. Speaking of inventory items, picking up items had weird glitches too. I would have to position the camera in all sorts of ways to be able to pick them up. There were whole sections where the floor turned black, the flashlight zap became just a square of white, weird graphical issues like that. And the frame rate dropped way too often for a major game like this, especially on this hardware. After playing for 5 or so hours, I dropped most of the settings down, which mostly fixed the frame rate, but it would still drop quite often. The most frustrating frame rate issue was during story transitions. A lot of transitions consisted of a car driving down a foresty road, and the dialogue would stutter so bad I would miss whole sections.
I can't get that manuscript page out of my head. I've never seen killers reach out so directly before.
Damn impressive work so far.
I appreciate all the full motion video, it looks great, but not when I can't hear what they're saying. How can they release a game like this? Also, I'm just annoyed that this was an exclusive to the Epic Games Store. It's sad that it released with so many problems because the game is gorgeous. The FMV is innovative. Maybe I shouldn't expect a major release to run well, but you know what always runs well at release? Capcom games. The Resident Evil engine needs some props here because those games run flawlessly from day one every time. It's like I'm congratulating the Pope for being Catholic, but here we are. Even with all these issues though, Alan Wake 2 is worth playing, especially if you're into weird surrealist stuff or fantastic graphics. I would recommend swapping between the two sections as you go, because having to play just the Alan Wake sections for too long gets frustrating. It did for me when I had too many sections to do after I completed the climactic battle for Saga. The story too is definitely worth playing. It has twists and turns worthy of a TV drama, and things become all too real for our detectives as the story progresses in a way that really raises the stakes beautifully. If you want to hear more about the story and what happens, the twists and turns, subscribe to this channel and I'll be releasing the spoiler story discussion later this week. Thanks for watching, and remember, stay in the light. Alan Wake. Wake. Alan Wake. Wake. I'm drowning. I'm drowning. Wake. Wake. Alan Wake. Wake. Alan Wake.